Welcome back to Courtroom Conversations, your deep dive into the most gripping legal battles, right here on the Classic Courtroom YouTube channel. If you're fascinated by true crime and courtroom drama like I am, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. I'm Dylan Brooks Hamilton, and I'm joined, as always, by the brilliant legal mind of Susan Kelly Ashford. Today, we're taking you back to a case that sent shockwaves through the nation back in 1994, a case many of you probably remember. The Susan Smith case.
That's right. Even 3 decades later, this case continues to grab our attention. It's one that really digs into the dark side of human nature and forces us to grapple with some truly unsettling questions.
You've probably heard of the Susan Smith case, where she was convicted of drowning her 2 young sons, 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alex. But for those who need a refresher, she initially claimed her sons were abducted during a carjacking. It was a story that captivated the nation, with everyone hoping and praying for those boys' safe return.
What's so chilling is how she managed to deceive everyone for 9 days. She went on national television playing the role of a grieving mother. It was a complete fabrication, a carefully constructed facade to hide a horrific truth. And it was only after intense scrutiny and mounting evidence that her story began to unravel.
It really shows how powerful narratives can be, how easily we can be swayed by emotion, especially when it comes to something as universally relatable as a mother's love for her children.
Absolutely, but the truth, as we know, eventually came out. Susan Smith confessed to letting her car roll into a lake with Michael and Alex still strapped inside. Authorities believe her motive was a new boyfriend who didn't want children.
It's a motive that's both heartbreaking and almost impossible to comprehend. And now, 30 years later, Susan Smith appeared before the parole board, hoping to be released.
Right, and this is where things get really interesting. Her parole hearing reignited a national conversation, not just about this specific case, but about broader issues of justice, forgiveness, and the possibility of rehabilitation after committing such an unimaginable act.
One of the most powerful voices at the parole hearing was David Smith, Susan's ex-husband and the father of the victims. He spoke out vehemently against her parole. He doesn't believe she's truly remorseful and believes she'll never be rehabilitated.
His testimony was incredibly raw and emotionally charged. It wasn't just about legal arguments. It was about the enduring pain of a father who lost his sons in such a horrific way. And it raises the question, how do you even begin to measure the impact of such a loss? How do you quantify the pain, the grief, the gaping hole left behind?
Which gives you a glimpse into the unimaginable rage and despair he must have felt.
It's a powerful reminder that these cases aren't just abstract legal battles. They involve real people whose lives are irrevocably shattered. And sometimes the legal system, with its focus on punishment and rehabilitation, can't fully address the depths of human emotion and the complexities of trauma that these cases bring to the surface.
Now, during the parole hearing, Susan Smith herself addressed the board. She admitted that her actions were horrible and claimed to be a Christian who has found forgiveness through God. She pleaded for the board to show her that same mercy.
And this raises a crucial question for us to consider. Can someone who has committed such an atrocious act ever truly be redeemed? Is forgiveness, whether from a higher power, from society, or even from oneself, even possible in the face of such a devastating loss?
And what about the legal implications? Can someone truly demonstrate rehabilitation after 30 years in prison, especially when their crime was so calculated and devastating? Does time served truly address the magnitude of their actions?
It's a question that has been debated by legal scholars and ethicists for centuries. There are so many factors to consider. The nature of the crime, the individual's behavior in prison, their psychological state, and the potential risk they might pose to society if released. And in this case, it gets even more complex.
Because while Susan Smith is asking for mercy and claiming remorse, there's another side to the story that's harder to reconcile with her pleas for redemption.
Exactly. Throughout her time in prison, Susan has had numerous disciplinary issues, reports of self-harm, drug use, and even inappropriate relationships with prison staff, which resulted in criminal convictions for those involved, have cast a shadow over her claims of rehabilitation.
It's this contradiction that makes her case so difficult to assess. If she's truly a changed person, as she asserts, why has her behavior been so consistently problematic behind bars? It seems like the parole board would have a tough time reconciling these two sides of the Susan Smith story.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity to an already difficult case. The parole board had to weigh those claims of remorse against a pattern of behavior that seems to contradict them. They had access to psychological evaluations, behavioral reports, and testimonies from various parties, and they had to sift through all of that to try and determine whether Susan Smith genuinely poses a risk to society or if she deserves a second chance.
And to add to this already intricate narrative, we have to consider the letter Susan Smith wrote to the state newspaper back in 2015.
Right. In that letter, she attempted to present herself in a different light. She claimed to be misunderstood and not the monster society perceives her to be. It's a fascinating glimpse into her mindset, even years after the crime. It's almost as if she's aware of her public image and is grappling with how to reshape the narrative surrounding her actions.
It makes you wonder what's going on in her mind. Is it genuine remorse and a desire to change the perception of her? Or is it a calculated attempt to manipulate public opinion in her favor? It's really difficult to say for sure.
And that's what makes this case so captivating. It's not just about the legal arguments, it's about trying to understand the human element, the psychology behind such a horrific act, and the possibility of redemption even after committing such a crime.
It's about delving into those dark corners of human nature and grappling with questions that don't have easy answers. And I think that's what keeps people so fascinated by this case, even after all these years.
It really does force us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world around us. And I think that's what makes these deep dives so valuable. They're not just about rehashing the facts. They're about exploring the bigger questions, the human stories, and the complex emotions that lie at the heart of these legal battles. And speaking of those human stories, we can't forget about David Smith's perspective on forgiveness. He recently made a statement where he said he has forgiven Susan, not because she deserves it, but for his own peace of mind and faith.
It's an incredibly powerful statement.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to the complexities of forgiveness in the face of such profound loss. It's not about condoning the actions or minimizing the pain. It's about finding a way to move forward without being consumed by anger and resentment.
I think it's important to note that there are different types of forgiveness. Sometimes it's about reconciliation, about rebuilding a relationship. But in cases like this, it's often more about releasing the negative emotions that can keep you trapped in the past. It's a personal journey, an internal process that doesn't necessarily involve the perpetrator.
And it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that David Smith has clearly grappled with for years. And it's a testament to his strength and resilience that he's been able to reach this point.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how even in the darkest of circumstances, the human spirit can find a way to heal, to find some semblance of peace, even amidst the most unimaginable pain.
Absolutely.
Right.
But at the same time, forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It doesn't change the fact that 2 young lives were lost. And it doesn't lessen the impact of those losses on the people left behind.
Exactly. And that's why this case is so challenging. It forces us to confront those uncomfortable truths, to acknowledge the complexities of human emotion and the limits of our legal system, to fully address the depth of suffering involved.
So after considering all of these factors, the testimonies, the psychological evaluations, Susan Smith's behavior in prison, the parole board ultimately decided to deny her parole.
It was a decision that likely brought mixed emotions for everyone involved. For David Smith, it probably brought a sense of relief, maybe even validation of his belief that Susan should remain incarcerated.
But for Susan Smith, it's another setback, another few years behind bars, and more time to contemplate the consequences of her actions.
It begs the question, does time served ever truly equate to justice served? Especially in a case like this. Is there any amount of time that can atone for taking 2 innocent lives?
It's a tough question, and I don't think there's an easy answer. It's a question that legal experts and philosophers have been debating for centuries. There are so many different perspectives on punishment rehabilitation and the very nature of justice itself.
And it's important to remember that the legal system isn't just about retribution, it's also about protecting society. So in cases like Susan Smith's, the parole board has to weigh the potential risk she might pose if released.
They have to consider whether she's truly reformed, whether she understands the gravity of her actions, and whether she's capable of living a law-abiding life outside of prison walls.
It's a heavy responsibility, making those kinds of life-altering decisions. And in this case, it seems the evidence pointed towards continued incarceration. But that doesn't mean it's a permanent decision. Susan Smith will have the opportunity to appear before the parole board again in the future.
And with each hearing comes the possibility of a different outcome. Perhaps with time, continued therapy, and genuine introspection, she might demonstrate a level of rehabilitation that convinces the board she's no longer a threat to society.
It's certainly possible, but there's a lot of skepticism surrounding her case. The scars of her actions run deep, and for many, it's hard to imagine her ever being truly remorseful or deserving of a second chance.
It's a tragic story that continues to unfold, raising these profound questions about forgiveness, justice, and the very nature of humanity.
It compels us to examine our own beliefs, and grapple with the complexities of a system that tries to balance punishment with the possibility of redemption.
It's a story that, as we've seen, touches on so many different facets of the human experience. We've talked about the legal aspects, the psychological complexities, and the moral dilemmas. But at the heart of it all is a story about loss, the loss of two innocent lives, and the ripple effect that loss has had on everyone involved.
It's so easy to get caught up in the legal arguments and the debates surrounding the parole hearing, but we must never lose sight of the human cost. Michael and Alex Smith, those two young boys, are the ones who ultimately paid the highest price. Their absence is a constant ache, a void that can never be filled.
And their father, David, has carried the weight of that loss for 3 decades. His strength and resilience throughout this ordeal are remarkable. But it's clear that the pain never truly goes away. He's a living testament to the enduring impact of this tragedy.
And I think that's one of the reasons why this case continues to resonate so deeply with the public. It taps into our primal fears, our sense of justice, and our yearning for understanding in the face of the incomprehensible. We crave answers, we seek closure, but sometimes those things remain elusive.
It's true. And part of engaging with these complex cases is accepting the ambiguity, the unanswered questions, the gray areas that defy easy categorization. We can analyze the legal arguments, delve into the psychological profiles, but sometimes we're left with more questions than answers.
Exactly. And the Susan Smith case is a stark reminder that there are no simple solutions, no black and white answers. It's a journey into the depths of human behavior, an exploration of the consequences of choices, and a testament to the enduring power of both love and loss. And those are themes that continue to fascinate and challenge us even decades later.
So as this case continues to evolve, we'll be here on Classic Courtroom to keep you updated on the latest developments and insights. But for now, we'd love to hear from you, our viewers. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you believe that someone who commits such a horrific act can ever truly be rehabilitated? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
We're always eager to engage in thoughtful discussions and explore the diverse perspectives that surround these complex legal battles. Because ultimately, that's what makes these deep dives so compelling. They push us to confront uncomfortable truths, to challenge our own beliefs, and to engage in meaningful conversations about justice, forgiveness, and the very nature of humanity.
And that's what we strive to do here on Courtroom Conversations. If you're as intrigued by these legal dramas as we are, make sure you like this video and subscribe to Classic Courtroom. For more deep dives into the most captivating courtroom sagas, we'll see you in our next episode. Until then, keep those legal minds sharp